The night my husband passed away, the funeral director called, "Ma'am, could you come here now? We found something in his pocket we have to show you." Then he added, "Please, don't tell your kids. You'll be in danger." When I arrived and saw what they'd found, I froze. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Now, let me tell you how I got to that terrifying moment, standing in that cold funeral home at midnight, realizing my entire world was about to shatter. 3 days earlier, I was still just Eleanor Henderson, grieving widow and devoted mother. James had died suddenly of what the doctors called a massive heart attack. Natural causes, they said. Nothing suspicious. Just a 62-year-old man whose heart gave out while he was working late in his home office. I found him there myself when I came home from my book club meeting, slumped over his desk, still wearing his reading glasses, a cup of coffee gone cold beside him. The paramedics said he'd probably died instantly. No suffering, they assured me, as if that made losing my husband of 39 years any easier. The funeral arrangements had been a blur of casseroles from neighbors, endless decisions about flowers and music, and my 2 adult children hovering over me like I might break at any moment. David, my oldest at 38, had taken charge with the efficiency of the successful attorney he'd become. Sarah, 35 and a registered nurse, kept trying to press sedatives on me that I didn't want. "Mom, you need to rest," she'd say, holding out little white pills. Grief is exhausting for someone your age. Someone my age, as if 64 was ancient, as if I hadn't been taking care of myself and everyone else for decades. "I'm fine," I'd tell her, the same words I'd been saying since James collapsed, because what else do you say when your world implodes? That you feel like you're drowning? That the house feels too big and too quiet and full of memories that hurt to breathe? David had insisted on handling all the legal paperwork, sweeping in with his briefcase and important phone calls. "Don't worry about any of this, Mom. I'll take care of everything." He'd always been protective, maybe too protective, treating me like I was made of glass ever since his father died. The wake had been standing room only. James had been loved in our small Ohio town, respected for his work as an accountant and his volunteer efforts at the church. People shared stories about his kindness, his integrity, his devotion to family. Salt of the earth, they called him. A good man who'd worked hard and loved well. I'd stood there accepting condolences, wearing my black dress in appropriate grief, nodding at all the right moments. But inside, I was numb. 49 years since our first date, 39 years of marriage, and suddenly I was supposed to figure out who Eleanor Henderson was without James. The funeral service was beautiful. David gave a eulogy that had half the church crying, talking about what a wonderful father and husband James had been. Sarah sang his favorite hymn, her voice breaking on the high notes. I sat in the front pew, surrounded by flowers and sympathy, feeling like I was watching someone else's life. After the burial, after the last casserole had been delivered and the last sympathy card read, the house finally fell quiet. David and Sarah had both offered to stay, but I'd sent them home to their own families. I needed space to think, to process, to figure out what came next. That's when the phone rang. 11:47 p.m. according to the clock by my bed. "Mrs. Henderson, this is Robert Morrison from Morrison Funeral Home. I'm sorry to call so late, but something's come up that I think you need to see immediately." I'd been half asleep, drifting in that strange space between waking and dreaming where I kept forgetting James was gone. "Is everything all right? Is there a problem with the burial?" "Not exactly, ma'am. When we were preparing the final paperwork, we found something in your husband's suit jacket pocket that we missed during the initial preparation. Something that—" He paused, and I could hear him breathing. "Ma'am, I think you should come down here right away. And please, don't mention this to anyone else yet, not even your children." The way he said it made my blood run cold. "Mr. Morrison, you're scaring me. I don't mean to frighten you, but this is delicate, very delicate. Can you come now?" I looked around my empty bedroom, at James's side of the bed still unmade, at his reading glasses still sitting on the nightstand. "I'll be right there." The drive to the funeral home felt like something out of a nightmare. The streets of Cedar Falls were empty, streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. I kept thinking about Mr. Morrison's voice, the careful way he'd chosen his words. "Don't tell your children. You could be in danger." What could James possibly have had in his pocket that would put me in danger? The funeral home looked different at night. Darker, more imposing, with only a few lights on in the back office. Mr. Morrison met me at the side entrance, his usual professional composure replaced by something that looked like genuine worry. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Henderson. I know this is unusual, but given what we found..." He led me through a hallway I'd never seen before, past empty viewing rooms and into his private office. On his desk was a small evidence bag containing what looked like a folded piece of paper and a tiny electronic device I didn't recognize. "We found these in the inside pocket of your husband's suit jacket. The pocket was sewn shut from the inside, which is why we missed it initially. Your husband had clearly hidden these items deliberately." I stared at the bag, my heart pounding. "What are they?" Mr. Morrison pulled on latex gloves and carefully removed the items. The paper was actually several papers, folded tightly together. The electronic device was small and rectangular, with a tiny screen. "The device is a digital recorder, Mrs. Henderson. High-end, professional grade, the kind investigators use." He handed me the papers. "And these, well, I think you'd better read them yourself." With trembling fingers, I unfolded the first sheet. It was in James's handwriting, his careful accountant's script that I'd seen on Christmas cards and grocery lists for decades. But these words made no sense. David, suspicious financial activity, unexplained income, lifestyle beyond means, investigated source. I looked up at Mr. Morrison, confused. "I don't understand." "David makes good money as an attorney." "Keep reading," he said gently. The second page was more detailed. James had documented dates, amounts, suspicious behaviors. March 15th, David purchased new BMW, paid cash, claimed bonus from firm, checked with firm, no bonuses given this quarter. April 2nd, Sarah bought house in Maple Heights, $400,000 purchase price, minimal mortgage. Nurse salary insufficient for down payment. April 20th, both children asking detailed questions about my health, life insurance policies, will provisions. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the papers. James was investigating our children? "There's more," Mr. Morrison said, his voice carefully neutral. "The recordings on the device, their conversations, between your children, about you and your husband." The room felt like it was tilting. "What kind of conversations?" Instead of answering, he pressed a button on the recording device. David's voice filled the small office, clear and unmistakable. "The old man's getting suspicious. He's been asking too many questions about the money." Sarah's voice responded. "We need to be more careful. Maybe it's time to move to phase 2. "What's phase 2? David again. "The plan we discussed. Make it look natural. Heart attack, stroke, something believable for their age." My legs gave out and I sank into the chair behind me. My children, my babies, talking about killing their father and me like we were obstacles in their way. Mr. Morrison stopped the recording. "Mrs. Henderson, I think your husband discovered something about your children that terrified him. These recordings suggest they were planning to harm you both. But James died of a heart attack. Natural causes." "Did he?" Mr. Morrison's question hung in the air between us. "Mrs. Henderson, your husband was a careful man, methodical. If he hid this evidence, if he was recording your children's conversations, he suspected something terrible." I thought about James's last few weeks, how distracted he'd been, working late in his office with the door closed, how he'd been asking strange questions about my daily routines, who I talked to, where I went. I'd thought he was just being overprotective after his recent cardiac workup. "There's something else," Mr. Morrison said, pulling out another sheet of paper. "Your husband wrote this letter. It's addressed to you." With shaking hands, I opened the letter. James's familiar handwriting blurred through my tears. "My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, then something has happened to me and my worst fears have been confirmed. Our children are not who we thought they were. I've been investigating them for months, and what I've discovered breaks my heart. They're involved in something dangerous, something that puts us both at risk. The recordings will tell you everything. Trust no one in our family except yourself. Contact Detective Ray Martinez at the state police. He knows about my investigation. I love you, and I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. James." Detective Martinez. James had been working with the police. "Mrs. Henderson," Mr. Morrison said carefully, I think your husband's death might not have been as natural as everyone believes. I stared at him, the implications slowly sinking in. You think they killed him? I think your husband thought they were planning to kill him. And now that he's gone, he didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. If my children had killed their father, I was next. My phone buzzed with a text message. From David. Mom, I'm coming over in the morning. We need to discuss some financial matters regarding Dad's estate. For the first time since James died, I felt something other than grief. I felt afraid. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my kitchen with James's evidence spread across the table, listening to recording after recording of my children casually discussing murder. By dawn, I'd heard enough to know that my husband had died trying to protect me, and now I was alone with two people who saw me as their next victim. The recordings painted a picture so horrific, I kept hoping I'd wake up from a nightmare. David and Sarah had been systematically planning their parents' deaths for over a year. They'd researched methods, studied our routines, and calculated exactly how much money they'd inherit. The life insurance alone is $500,000, Sarah's voice had said on one recording, plus the house, Dad's retirement accounts, Mom's inheritance from Grandma Ruth. We're looking at close to $2 million total. The sooner the better, David had replied. Property values are going up. If we wait too long, the tax implications get complicated. They were talking about murdering their parents like it was a business transaction. The most chilling recording was from just 2 weeks ago. Sarah explaining how she could easily make a heart attack look natural. A small injection of potassium chloride mimics cardiac arrest perfectly. No one would question it at their age, especially with Dad's history of high blood pressure. I'd been making coffee when I heard that one, and I dropped the mug, sending ceramic shards across the kitchen floor. That's how they'd killed James. My daughter, the registered nurse who'd sworn an oath to do no harm, had murdered her own father with a hospital injection. At 7:30 a.m., I called the number James had written down for Detective Martinez. State Police, Martinez speaking. Detective, this is Eleanor Henderson. I think you knew my husband. James? There was a pause. Mrs. Henderson, I was wondering when you'd call. I'm sorry for your loss. You know about the investigation. I know your husband was very worried about his children's activities. We've been working together for about 3 months. I'm sorry we couldn't prevent what happened to him. So you believe they killed him? Another pause. Mrs. Henderson, can we meet? Somewhere private? What I have to tell you isn't safe to discuss over the phone. We arranged to meet at a small diner outside town. I told him I'd be wearing a blue scarf so he could recognize me. As I was getting ready to leave, my phone rang. Mom? David's voice, bright and cheerful. I'm running a little early. I'm actually pulling into your driveway now. My heart stopped. I looked out the front window and saw his black BMW in my driveway. The one James had noted was paid for in cash. Oh, that's fine, honey. I'll put on some coffee. Actually, Mom, Sarah's with me. We thought it would be good for us all to talk together about Dad's affairs. Both of them. Here, now. I glanced at the kitchen table where all of James's evidence was still scattered. If they saw it, just give me a minute to tidy up, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. You know how I am about keeping things neat. Of course, we'll wait in the car for a few minutes. Take your time. I hung up and frantically gathered all the papers and recordings, stuffing them into a shopping bag. Where could I hide them where my children wouldn't think to look? The basement? James's old workshop in the basement, behind his tool cabinet. I raced downstairs and shoved the bag into a space between the wall and the cabinet, pushing it as far back as possible. When I came back upstairs, David and Sarah were standing in my kitchen. David had used his key to let himself in. Mom, you look tired, Sarah said, studying my face with those sharp nurse's eyes. Are you sleeping? Are you taking the medication I gave you? The medication. I thought about the little white pills she'd been pushing on me since the funeral. Yes, I've been taking them. It was a lie. I'd been flushing them down the toilet, thinking they were just making me feel foggy and strange. Now I wondered what they really were. Good, Sarah smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Proper rest is important at your age, especially during grief. David was looking around the kitchen with the same sharp attention Sarah was paying to my face. Mom, we need to talk about some practical matters. Dad's bank accounts, the house, your financial situation going forward. Can't that wait? It's only been 4 days since the funeral. Actually, That's exactly why we can't wait, David said, pulling out a thick folder. There are time-sensitive issues. Tax implications, estate probate requirements. The sooner we get everything organized, the better protected you'll be. Protected. The word made my skin crawl. Sarah moved to the coffee pot. Let me make coffee for everyone. Mom, you should sit down. You're looking pale. As she busied herself with mugs and cream, I noticed her pulling something small from her purse, a tiny vial, almost hidden in her palm. My blood turned to ice. She was putting something in my coffee. Actually, I said, standing up abruptly, I just realized I have an appointment this morning with the insurance company about James's policy. Both of them turned to stare at me. What insurance company? David asked, his voice suddenly sharp. The life insurance. They need some paperwork signed. I was making it up as I went along, hoping I sounded convincing. Mom, I told you I'd handle all of that, David said. You don't need to worry about insurance paperwork. That's what I'm here for. I know, sweetie, but they specifically requested that I come in person. Something about signature verification. Sarah was still holding the coffee cup she'd been preparing for me. Can't you reschedule? We've driven all the way over here. I really can't. They said it was urgent. I grabbed my purse and jacket. Rain check on the coffee? I was halfway to the front door when David caught my arm. Mom. His grip was firm, just shy of painful. We really need to have this conversation today about your future security. The way he said security made me think of James's recordings. I looked into my son's eyes and saw something I'd never seen before. Something cold and calculating that made me understand why James had been so afraid. Of course we do, I said, trying to pull away gently. But after I handle this insurance matter, I'll call you both later. David's grip tightened slightly. Mom, I think you're more confused than you're admitting. There is no insurance appointment. We checked. There's nothing scheduled. They'd been checking on my activities, monitoring me. Well then, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I guess I'll have to make one. I pulled free and walked out my front door, feeling their eyes on my back, like physical weight. As I drove away, I could see them in my rearview mirror, standing in my driveway, watching me go. They knew I knew something, and now I was running out of time. Detective Martinez was exactly what I'd expected from James's description. Mid-50s, gray hair, the kind of calm competence that comes from years of dealing with the worst humanity has to offer. He was already sitting in a corner booth when I arrived at the diner, nursing a cup of coffee and reading a newspaper. Mrs. Henderson? He stood as I approached, extending his hand. Ray Martinez. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. I slid into the booth across from him, my hands still shaking from the encounter with my children. Detective, I need to know everything. My husband is dead, and I think my children killed him. I think you're right. His directness was both shocking and oddly comforting. Your husband came to me 3 months ago with concerns about David and Sarah's financial activities. We'd been building a case. What kind of case? Martinez pulled out a thin folder. David's been involved in money laundering for a drug operation. Sarah's been stealing and selling prescription medications from the hospital. Together, they've been moving large amounts of cash through fake real estate transactions. The room felt like it was spinning. Drugs? My children are involved with drugs? Your son's law firm represents some very dangerous people. Mrs. Henderson. When he started skimming money from client accounts to fund his own lifestyle, he attracted the wrong kind of attention. Sarah's drug theft operation was his way of paying back what he owed. But they're successful. David has a thriving practice. Sarah has a good job. David's practice is mostly legal aid cases and small-time criminal defense. He makes maybe $80,000 a year. Sarah makes $65,000 as a nurse. Neither of them could afford their current lifestyles on legitimate income. I thought about the BMW, Sarah's expensive house, the designer clothes I'd noticed at the funeral. How much money are we talking about? David owes his criminal clients close to $200,000. Sarah's drug operation was bringing in about $50,000 a year, but most of that was going to pay interest on David's debt. Martinez leaned forward. Mrs. Henderson, your children weren't just planning to kill you for inheritance money. They were planning to kill you to stay alive. The implication hit me like a physical blow. Their clients would kill them if they couldn't pay? These aren't the kind of people who accept payment plans. Your husband's life insurance and your combined assets would have been enough to clear David's debt and give them both a fresh start. I pulled out my phone and showed him the text David had sent earlier. They're escalating. They tried to drug me this morning. Martinez read the message, his expression growing darker. Mrs. Henderson, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You're in immediate danger. These people have already killed once, and they're not going to stop now. What do I do? First, you can't go home, not alone. Do you have somewhere safe you can stay? I thought about my options. Most of my close friends were James's age or older. I couldn't put them at risk. My sister lives in Columbus, but call her. Tell her you're coming for a visit. Don't mention why. Don't give details. What about the evidence? James left recordings, documents. It's all hidden in my basement. We'll get it, but not today. Right now, the priority is keeping you alive long enough to testify against them. My phone buzzed with another text. From Sarah. Mom, you left your medication on the counter. We're worried about you missing doses. Where are you? Martinez read the message and cursed under his breath. They're tracking your medication schedule. Mrs. Henderson, what exactly did Sarah give you? Little white pills. She said they were for anxiety and sleep. Did you take them? I flushed them down the toilet. They made me feel strange. Smart woman. Martinez stood up. We're leaving. Now. I'm driving you to Columbus myself. As we walked toward his unmarked police car, my phone rang. David's name on the screen. Answer it, Martinez said. Act normal. Don't let them know you're with police. Hi, David. Mom, where are you? We came back to check on you and your car's gone. I decided to drive around for a while. Clear my head. That's not like you. You hate driving alone. He was right. I'd always been nervous driving by myself, especially on highways. I'm just trying to process everything that's happened. Come home, Mom. Sarah made lunch. We'll wait for you. I looked at Martinez, who was shaking his head vigorously. Actually, I think I'm going to visit Ruth for a few days. There was a long pause. Ruth in Columbus? Mom, that's a 2-hour drive. You shouldn't be driving that far alone. I'll be fine. Wait for us. We'll drive you. The desperation in his voice was terrifying. No, I need some time by myself. Mom, David's voice changed, becoming harder. I really think you should come home. Sarah's concerned about your mental state. The grief might be affecting your judgment. My mental state. Sarah's medical expertise. They were already building a case for having me declared incompetent. I have to go, David. I'll call you when I get to Ruth's. Mom, don't hang up. We need to talk about... I ended the call and immediately turned off the phone. Good, Martinez said as we got into his car. But they're going to escalate now. Desperate people make desperate choices. As we pulled out of the diner parking lot, I saw a black BMW turning into the entrance behind us. They followed me, I whispered. Martinez checked his rearview mirror and accelerated. Hold on, Mrs. Henderson. We're about to find out exactly how far your children are willing to go. The BMW was gaining on us, and I realized this quiet Sunday morning was about to become a lot more dangerous. The chase lasted 20 minutes and felt like a lifetime. Martinez drove with the practiced skill of someone who'd done this before, taking back roads and side streets I didn't even know existed. The BMW stayed with us for most of it, David driving with a recklessness that terrified me. This was my son, the careful attorney who'd never gotten so much as a speeding ticket, driving like a maniac to catch his own mother. When we finally lost them on a winding country road, Martinez pulled over and radioed for backup. This is Detective Martinez, badge 4471. I have a witness in protective custody. Need immediate assistance with surveillance and arrest warrants. Witness in protective custody. That's what I was now. Mrs. Henderson, Martinez said after ending his radio call, I need to tell you something your husband discovered right before he died. Something that changes everything. I was staring out the back window, still looking for the BMW. What now? Your children weren't just planning to kill you for the inheritance money. They already had a buyer lined up for your house. A buyer? But the house isn't even in probate yet. David had power of attorney documents drawn up, forged your signature, and put the house on the market 3 days before your husband died. Martinez pulled out another file. James found the real estate listing online. That's when he knew they were planning to move immediately after your death. The house where I'd raised my children, where James and I had built our life together, was already being sold. While I was grieving at his funeral, they were planning to cash in on my murder. Detective, How could they forge my signature on legal documents? David's an attorney. He knows that's illegal. Your son stopped caring about legal a long time ago, Mrs. Henderson. When you're stealing from drug dealers, forgery is the least of your concerns. My phone buzzed again. I turned it back on despite Martinez's advice, needing to see what my children were doing. Text from Sarah. Mom, we're really worried. David thinks you might be having some kind of breakdown. We've contacted Dr. Williams about having you evaluated. Dr. Williams was my primary care physician, the one who'd been treating James's blood pressure. Sarah knew him professionally from the hospital. They're going to have me declared mentally incompetent, I said, showing Martinez the text. Not if we arrest them first. He started the car again. But Mrs. Henderson, I need those recordings your husband made. That's the evidence we need to prove premeditation. They're in my basement, hidden behind James's tool cabinet. We'll get them tonight. I'm calling in a team. As we drove toward Columbus, Martinez filled in more details of James's investigation. My husband had been far more thorough than I'd realized. He'd documented financial transactions, photographed suspicious meetings, even followed David to several locations where money changed hands. Your husband was braver than he knew, Martinez said. The people your son owes money to don't hesitate to kill witnesses. Is that why they killed James? To stop his investigation? Partly, but also because they needed the life insurance money immediately. David's creditors were getting impatient. The thought of James dying alone in his office, betrayed by the children he'd loved and provided for, made me sick. Detective, I want them to pay for what they did. All of it. They will. But first we need to keep you alive long enough to testify. When we reached my sister Ruth's house in Columbus, Martinez insisted on checking the entire property before he'd let me go inside. Ruth, bless her, took one look at my face and asked no questions, simply pulled me into a hug and promised I could stay as long as needed. That evening, as I sat in Ruth's guest room trying to process everything that had happened, Martinez called with an update. We got the evidence, he said. James hid more than just recordings. He had financial documents, photographs, even copies of David's forged signatures. Mrs. Henderson, your husband built an airtight case against your children. What happens now? Now we wait for them to make a mistake, which, based on their behavior today, shouldn't take long. He was right. At 11 p.m., my phone rang. Sarah's number. Mom, thank God. Where are you? We've been searching everywhere. I'm safe, Sarah. Mom, you're scaring us. This isn't like you, running off without explanation. David thinks you might be having some kind of psychological episode related to grief. Psychological episode. Medical terminology to support an incompetence claim. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in months, I said. Mom, we found something disturbing in Dad's office. Some kind of investigation he was conducting. About David's business, about my work at the hospital. We think his grief over his heart condition might have made him paranoid. They'd found evidence that James left behind. Now they were going to claim he was mentally unstable when he made the recordings. Sarah, I know what you and David have been doing. There was a long silence. When she spoke again, her voice was different, colder. Mom, I think you need professional help. David's already spoken to Judge Morrison about emergency custody proceedings. Emergency custody for a 64-year-old woman. You can't do that. Actually, we can, especially when we present evidence of your recent erratic behavior and the concerning materials we found among Dad's belongings. Sarah, your father wasn't paranoid. He was protecting me. From what, Mom? I took a deep breath. From you. Another long silence. Then Sarah said something that made my blood freeze. Mom, you should know that Dr. Williams found some concerning irregularities in Dad's blood work from his last visit. Things that suggest he might have been administered something that contributed to his heart attack. She was admitting it. My daughter, the nurse I'd raised with love and pride, was telling me she'd murdered her father. And Mom? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper now. Those irregularities? They're exactly the kind that would show up if someone was slowly being poisoned. Someone like you. The line went dead. I sat in Ruth's guest room, holding a silent phone, finally understanding the true horror of my situation. My children hadn't just planned to kill me quickly for inheritance money. They'd been slowly poisoning me for months, just like they'd done to James. And now that I'd run, now that I knew the truth, they were going to accelerate their timeline. Detective Martinez was right. Desperate people make desperate choices. And I was about to discover just how desperate my children could be. 3 hours after Sarah's chilling phone call, Detective Martinez arrived at Ruth's house with 2 other officers and a mobile crime lab unit. The quiet suburban street suddenly looked like a scene from a police procedural, complete with unmarked cars and serious-faced people carrying equipment I couldn't identify. "Mrs. Henderson," Martinez said as he settled into Ruth's living room, "we've been busy since this afternoon. What your daughter said about blood work irregularities? We had James's body exhumed for emergency autopsy." The room tilted slightly. "You dug up my husband?" "The preliminary results confirm what we suspected. James was systematically poisoned over a period of several months. Small doses of a compound that mimics heart disease symptoms." He pulled out a folder thick with medical documents. "Your children didn't just kill him that night. They'd been killing him slowly for half a year." Ruth grabbed my hand, her face pale. "Eleanor, what kind of monsters did you raise?" That was the question that had been haunting me all day. How do 2 children you love and nurture and sacrifice for turn into people who can methodically murder their own parents? "Detective," I said, "Sarah mentioned irregularities that would show up if someone was being slowly poisoned. Someone like me. We're going to test you immediately if they've been dosing you the same way they dosed James." He didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. If I'd been poisoned for months, there might be damage we couldn't undo. The blood draw took 5 minutes. The waiting began immediately after. While the lab processed my blood work, Martinez explained what they'd discovered about my children's criminal activities. The scope was breathtaking and horrifying. "David isn't just laundering money for drug dealers," he said. "He's been running an identity theft operation, stealing client information and selling it to organized crime syndicates. Sarah isn't just stealing medications. She's been falsifying patient records to hide deaths she's caused by giving incorrect medications to elderly patients." I stared at him. "Sarah's been killing her patients?" "At least 7 that we've identified so far. All elderly, all alone, all with significant assets that somehow ended up being donated to shell charities David established. My daughter wasn't just a murderer. She was a serial killer who targeted vulnerable elderly patients, stealing from them as they died." "How long has this been going on?" "Based on financial records? About 3 years. They've been perfecting their methods. 3 years. While I was proud of my successful children, while I was bragging to my friends about David's law practice and Sarah's dedication to nursing, they were systematically murdering innocent people." "Mrs. Henderson," said Officer Catherine Webb, Martinez's partner, "we need you to understand something crucial. Your children aren't just desperate for money anymore. They're cornered. When we arrest them, they're facing multiple counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy, elder abuse, and financial fraud. They're looking at life sentences without possibility of parole. Which means," Martinez continued, "they have absolutely nothing left to lose. People in that situation become extremely dangerous." As if to prove his point, my phone rang. David's number. "Answer it," Martinez said. "But we're recording everything now." "Hi, David." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Mom, we know where you are." The simple statement sent ice through my veins. "How? Did you really think we wouldn't check Aunt Ruth's house? We're in the neighborhood right now. Actually, we're parked across the street, watching all the police cars at her house." I looked out Ruth's front window and saw the black BMW under a streetlight 2 houses down. "David, why are you doing this?" "Because you forced our hand, Mom. We tried to do this the easy way, the kind way. You would have just gone to sleep and never woken up. No pain, no fear, no knowledge of what was happening. But now?" His voice was getting harder, more desperate. "Now it has to be messy. The police know everything. Actually, they know some things, but not everything." David's voice took on that lawyer tone he used when he thought he was being clever. "For instance, they don't know about the bomb." Martinez grabbed the phone from me. "This is Detective Martinez, State Police. What bomb?" "Oh, hello, Detective. David Henderson here. I believe you've been investigating my family's private affairs." Even over the phone, I could hear the smug satisfaction in his voice. "The bomb is simple but effective. Remote detonator, positioned to take out Ruth's house and everyone in it. Unless my mother comes out to talk to us in the next 5 minutes, we push a button and solve all our problems at once." Martinez was already gesturing to the other officers, who were evacuating Ruth and calling for the bomb squad. "Henderson, you're talking about killing a police detective and multiple civilians. That's terrorism. That's survival, detective. My mother has evidence that could put Sarah and me in prison for life. You have evidence that could put us in prison for life. Removing all of that evidence and all the witnesses seems like good strategy." I grabbed the phone back. "David, think about what you're saying. You're talking about murdering your aunt, murdering police officers, murdering me. Mom, we murdered Dad 6 months ago. We've been murdering you slowly for 4 months. We've murdered 7 innocent people in Sarah's hospital. At this point, a few more deaths just expedite our retirement plan. 4 months. They'd been poisoning me for 4 months, slowly destroying my health while I trusted them to take care of me in my grief. Why?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "Because you and Dad have everything we need, and you're too old to enjoy it anyway. Because we're young and smart and deserve better than waiting around for you to die naturally." David's voice was matter-of-fact, as if he were explaining a business decision. "Because we can." The line went dead. Martinez was shouting orders to evacuate the surrounding houses. The bomb squad was en route. Sharpshooters were taking positions. And I was standing in my sister's living room, finally understanding that the children I'd raised had become monsters capable of anything. "Mrs. Henderson," Officer Webb said, "we need to get you out of here immediately." But as we headed toward the back door, an explosion rocked the house. Not the big explosion David had threatened, but something smaller. Precise. The power went out. The phones went dead. And in the darkness, I heard Sarah's voice coming from somewhere inside the house. "Hello, Mother." Surprise. In the chaos that followed, I learned something about myself I'd never known before. When faced with mortal danger, when my own children were hunting me through a darkened house with the intent to murder me, I didn't freeze. I didn't panic. I got angry. "Sarah," I called out, my voice surprisingly steady as Martinez and I crouched behind Ruth's overturned dining table. "I have to say, this is quite a departure from your usual bedside manner. Mom, I know you're trying to be brave, but you should know that I've killed 7 people. You'll just be number 8. 7 people. My daughter was actually proud of being a serial killer. 8 if you don't count your father," I replied, because apparently near-death experiences bring out my sarcastic side. Though I suppose family murders might rate their own category in your accounting system. Martinez was staring at me like I'd lost my mind, but I could see the tactical advantages of keeping Sarah talking while his backup surrounded the house. Plus, 40 years of motherhood had taught me exactly which buttons to push. "Mom, you're not taking this seriously." "Oh, I'm taking it very seriously, sweetheart. I'm just impressed by your efficiency. 7 murders, systematic elder abuse, drug trafficking, money laundering, and matricide, all while maintaining a full-time nursing schedule. I have to admit, your time management skills have really improved since high school." I heard footsteps moving through Ruth's kitchen, the sound of someone who knew where they were going. Sarah had been in this house dozens of times for family gatherings. She knew the layout as well as I did. "Where's Ruth?" I whispered to Martinez. "Safe. We evacuated her through the basement before the power went out." "And David?" "Still in the BMW. We have him surrounded, but he's claiming to have the detonator for a larger device." "Is there actually a bomb?" "Our equipment suggests yes. Something significant enough to level this house and damage several others." So David wasn't bluffing. My son was prepared to commit mass murder to cover up his crimes. "Mom?" Sarah's voice was closer now, probably in the hallway between the living room and bedrooms. "I want you to know that what we gave Dad at the end was merciful. It was quick, but what I have for you is different." "Different how?" "Dear?" I kept my voice conversational, like we were discussing dinner plans. "Slower. More painful. I want you to understand what you've cost us by running away." Martinez was speaking quietly into his radio, coordinating with the teams outside. I caught fragments. "Suspect armed and dangerous. Civilian in immediate jeopardy. Authorization for lethal force." Lethal force. Against my own daughter. "Sarah," I called out, "I'm curious about something. When did you decide I needed to die? Was it before or after you killed your first patient?" There was a pause. Then, "Mrs. Patterson was an accident. She reminded me of you, actually." Stubborn, interfering, asking too many questions about her medications. Mrs. Patterson. I knew that name. She'd been Ruth's neighbor before moving to the senior center where Sarah worked. So you've been practicing your murder techniques on helpless elderly people for 3 years, and I'm just your final exam? You're my masterpiece, Mom. Everything I learned from the others, I perfected for you. The casual pride in her voice was more terrifying than any threat. This wasn't my daughter anymore. This was someone who had transformed herself into a predator, and I was just her latest prey. But I was also Eleanor Henderson, and I'd raised 2 children who turned out to be sociopaths. If anyone was qualified to handle entitled, manipulative behavior, it was me. Sarah, honey, I hate to break this to you, but your masterpiece has some serious flaws. What do you mean? Well, for starters, you're trapped in a house surrounded by police officers with high-powered rifles. Your brother is sitting in a car that's probably surrounded by even more police officers. And your entire criminal operation has been exposed by evidence your father left behind. I could hear her moving again, this time toward the living room. Plus, I continued, you've just confessed to multiple murders while being recorded by state police detectives. So even if you somehow kill me and escape, you've basically provided a complete audio confession for your trial. There won't be a trial if there are no witnesses. Sarah, there are a dozen police officers outside this house. Did you think you were going to kill all of them too? For the first time, she sounded uncertain. We have a bomb. David has a bomb. You have a syringe full of whatever poison you've been using to kill people. That's not exactly an equal exchange rate. Martinez was holding up 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. The tactical team was moving. Besides, I said, raising my voice to cover the sound of officers entering through the back door. You made one critical error in your planning. What error? You assumed I was the same helpless woman you've been slowly poisoning for 4 months. You assumed I'd just lie down and let you murder me like I let you murder your father. The lights suddenly came back on. Sarah was standing 15 feet away, holding a syringe, her face twisted with a rage I'd never seen before. But here's the thing about being slowly poisoned, sweetheart. It makes you weak and tired and confused. And once you stop being poisoned, I stood up from behind the table, no longer hiding. You start getting your strength back. Mom, don't move. Or what? You'll inject me with poison? Sarah, there are 6 police officers with guns pointed at you right now. Your criminal career is over. She looked around wildly, finally seeming to understand her situation. Now, I said, put down the syringe and surrender, or discover what happens when you threaten the life of someone who's spent 40 years dealing with your temper tantrums. For a moment, I thought she might actually do it. Put down the weapon, give up, accept defeat. Instead, she lunged at me with the syringe and learned that a mother protecting herself can be far more dangerous than her children ever imagined. The gunshot was deafeningly loud in Ruth's living room. Sarah collapsed 3 feet away from me, the syringe skittering across the hardwood floor. She was still alive, but blood was spreading from her shoulder where the police bullet had hit her. Eleanor! Ruth's voice from the doorway, where Officer Webb was restraining her from running into what was still technically an active crime scene. I'm okay, I called back, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true. Watching your own child get shot by police, even when they're trying to murder you, does something to your internal equilibrium that I'm not sure has a name. Sarah was crying, but not from pain, from rage, even wounded and caught. She was furious that her plan had failed. This isn't over, she gasped as the paramedics worked on her shoulder. David still has the detonator. You're all going to die anyway. Martinez was kneeling beside her, reading her rights while the medical team stabilized her for transport. Sarah Henderson, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse. The list went on for 2 full minutes. While the medics worked on Sarah, my phone rang. David again. Answer it, Martinez said. Let's see how he reacts to his sister being shot. Hi, David. Sarah's been arrested. I heard the gunshot. His voice was eerily calm. I assume she's dead? No, she's wounded. She'll live to stand trial. Pity. Well, it doesn't matter. Phase 2 is still operational. Phase 2? The bomb, Mother. I told you we had contingency plans. Through Ruth's front window, I could see the BMW still parked across the street, surrounded by police vehicles. David was sitting calmly in the driver's seat, holding what looked like a cell phone. "David," I said, "let me understand this. You're prepared to blow up an entire neighborhood, killing innocent families, just to cover up your crimes?" "I'm prepared to eliminate witnesses and evidence. The neighborhood casualties are unfortunate but necessary." Necessary. My son was planning mass murder and calling it necessary. "How big is this bomb, David?" "Big enough to level 6 houses and damage a dozen others. Big enough to ensure that any evidence your father collected, any recordings he made, any witnesses who might testify against us, all cease to exist." Martinez was frantically coordinating with the bomb squad, who were trying to approach the BMW without triggering a detonation. "David, there are children in these houses, innocent families who have nothing to do with our situation. Collateral damage, Mom. It's unfortunate, but Sarah and I have worked too hard building our operation to let one suspicious old man and his nosy wife destroy everything." One suspicious old man. He was talking about James, his own father, like he'd been an inconvenience rather than the man who'd raised and loved him. "How long have you been planning this? The murders, the poisoning, all of it?" 3 years of active planning. But honestly, I've been thinking about it since college. Do you know how frustrating it is to watch your parents sit on a fortune while you're struggling with student loans and entry-level jobs? So you've been planning to murder us since you were 25? I've been planning to inherit what should rightfully be mine. Yes, you and Dad are old. You've had your lives. Sarah and I are young, with decades ahead of us. It makes logical sense for the wealth to transfer to the people who can actually use it. The casual way he discussed murdering his parents was more chilling than Sarah's rage had been. At least Sarah had shown emotion. David was talking about double patricide like it was a business merger. "David, your father left you both substantial amounts in his will. You would have inherited everything eventually. Eventually isn't good enough when you owe dangerous people $200,000 and they're threatening to break your legs. So this is all about gambling debts? This is about survival and opportunity. The gambling debts were just the catalyst that moved up our timeline." Martinez was gesturing for me to keep David talking while the tactical teams moved into position. "What happens now, David? Let's say you detonate this bomb and kill dozens of innocent people. Then what? You think you'll just drive away and start a new life somewhere?" "Actually, yes. Sarah and I have new identities prepared, offshore accounts established, and a very nice little house in Costa Rica that doesn't extradite to the United States. They'd been planning their escape as carefully as they'd planned their murders. 3 years of preparation for this moment. You've thought of everything. We're not amateurs, Mom. We're professionals. Professional murderers. My children had become professional murderers." "David," I said, "I want you to know something before you push that button." "What's that?" "Your father was proud of you. Even when he discovered what you were doing, even when he was building a case against you. He told Detective Martinez that he hoped he was wrong about you. He hoped you'd prove him wrong and choose to be the good man he'd tried to raise." For the first time, David's voice wavered slightly. "Dad was naive. Dad was heartbroken. He loved you and Sarah more than his own life, and you repaid that love by murdering him. We did what we had to do." "No, David, you did what you wanted to do. You chose money over family. You chose greed over love. You chose to become killers rather than decent human beings. Are you finished with the guilt trip, Mom? Because I really do need to detonate this device before the bomb squad figures out how to disarm it." I looked out the window at my son, sitting calmly in his car, ready to commit mass murder to protect himself from the consequences of his choices. "Actually, David, I have one more thing to tell you. Make it quick. Your father's evidence, the recordings and documents you're so worried about, they're not in this house." There was a long pause. "What do you mean?" "I mean James was smarter than you gave him credit for. He left copies of everything with Detective Martinez, with his attorney, and with the FBI. Killing me won't destroy the evidence. It'll just add mass murder to the charges you're already facing." Another pause, longer this time. "You're lying." "Am I?" "David, you're a lawyer. Do you really think your father would keep the only copies of evidence this important in one location?" Through the window, I could see David's confident posture starting to change. For the first time, he looked uncertain. "Besides," I continued, "there's something else you don't know." "What?" "Your father didn't just record your conversations about killing us. He recorded your conversations about your other victims. The elderly patient Sarah murdered, the clients you stole from, the drug dealers you're laundering money for. Even if you kill every witness in this neighborhood, the FBI has everything they need to dismantle your entire operation. The silence stretched on for almost a minute. Finally, David spoke, and for the first time since this nightmare began, he sounded like the little boy I'd raised instead of the monster he'd become. Mom, I'm scared. And despite everything he'd done, despite everything he'd planned to do, my heart broke a little for the child he used to be. I know you are, sweetheart, but it's time to stop running. What happened next will stay with me for the rest of my life. David Henderson, my eldest son, the little boy who used to bring me dandelions and tell me they were bouquets of sunshine, sat in his BMW across from his aunt's house and made a choice that defined who he really was. He could have surrendered. He could have put down the detonator, stepped out of the car, and accepted responsibility for his crimes. Instead, he chose to take as many innocent people with him as possible. I'm sorry, Mom, he said into the phone, and I heard the click of a button being pressed, but nothing happened. No explosion, no destruction. Just David sitting in his car, pressing the detonator button over and over while nothing happened. What? David's voice was confused, panicked. It should have worked. The device was armed. The signal should have... Detective Martinez took the phone from me. David Henderson, this is Detective Martinez. Your bomb was disarmed 6 hours ago. That's impossible. Son, did you really think we'd let you sit with a live explosive device for this long? Our bomb squad has been working on your device since before we even found your sister in the house. I could see David through the window, his face going pale as the realization hit him. But how did you know about the bomb? Because your father told us about it. The confusion on David's face was visible even from a distance. What are you talking about? Dad died months ago. Your father recorded more than just your conversations about killing your parents. David, he recorded your conversations about contingency plans, backup methods, and yes, the bomb you plan to use if things went wrong. I grabbed the phone back. David, your father knew exactly what kind of people you and Sarah had become. He recorded everything. But that would mean... David's voice trailed off as the full implications sank in. That would mean he knew you were going to try to kill him. Yes. I felt tears starting down my cheeks. Your father died knowing his own children were planning to murder him, and he spent his last weeks recording evidence to protect me after you succeeded. Through the window, I watched my son's face crumple as he finally understood the depth of what he'd done. We killed our father, he whispered. Yes, David, you did. And we were poisoning you for months. Yes. Mom, his voice broke completely. What have we become? It was the first human emotion I'd heard from him all day, and it nearly destroyed me. I don't know, sweetheart, but it's not who your father and I tried to raise. The tactical team was moving toward the BMW now, confident that the bomb threat was neutralized. David made no move to resist as they surrounded his car. Mom, he said, I want you to know that I remember who I used to be. Before the gambling, before the debts, before Sarah and I started, before we became this, I remember being your little boy. I remember too. Do you think Dad would have forgiven us? I closed my eyes, thinking about James in his last weeks, working late into the night, building a case against his own children, knowing they were planning to kill him, but still hoping somehow he was wrong. I think your father died hoping you'd choose differently, but we didn't. No, David, you didn't. The line went quiet except for the sound of my son crying. After a moment, I heard car doors opening and voices giving instructions. They were taking him into custody. Mom? David's voice one last time. Yes? I'm sorry. For all of it. For Dad. For what we did to you. For the people Sarah killed. I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry. I know you are, sweetheart. Will you visit me? In prison? I looked around Ruth's living room, at the overturned furniture and bloodstains on the floor, at the police officers and crime scene technicians documenting the evidence of my children's attempt to murder me, at my sister standing in the doorway, her face pale with shock and disbelief. I don't know, David. I honest to God don't know. The call ended as they arrested him. An hour later, as the last of the police cars drove away and Ruth's house began to feel like a home again instead of a crime scene, Detective Martinez sat with me in the kitchen while I tried to process what had happened. Mrs. Henderson, there's something else you need to know about your husband's investigation. I was so emotionally exhausted, I wasn't sure I could handle any more revelations. What now? James didn't just gather evidence about David and Sarah's crimes. He gathered evidence about their victims. All of them. Martinez pulled out another thick folder. Your daughter didn't just kill 7 patients at the senior center. She killed 17. Your son didn't just steal from 3 client accounts. He stole from dozens. The scope kept getting worse. How many people did my children hurt? Based on your husband's documentation, Sarah's victims number at least 23. David's financial crimes affected over 40 families. Martinez looked at me with something that might have been admiration. Mrs. Henderson, your husband built cases that will put away not just your children, but an entire network of criminals they were working with. An entire network? The drug dealers David laundered money for. The identity theft ring Sarah was selling patient information to. The corrupt officials who were taking bribes to look the other way. He closed the folder. James Henderson may have started investigating his own children, but he ended up exposing a criminal organization that's been operating in this state for over a decade. My husband, the quiet accountant who worried about our budget and read mystery novels in his spare time, had brought down an entire criminal network. Detective, can I ask you something? Of course. In your professional opinion, what would have happened if James hadn't discovered what David and Sarah were doing? If he hadn't recorded their conversations and gathered all this evidence? Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Mrs. Henderson, based on what we know about their methods and timeline, you'd have died 6 months ago. Just like your husband. It would have looked like natural causes. David and Sarah would have inherited your estate, paid off their debts, and continued killing vulnerable elderly people for profit. I thought about all the patients in Sarah's care, all the clients who trusted David with their legal and financial affairs. How many more people would they have killed? Conservatively? Dozens. Sarah was getting bolder, more confident. David was expanding his operation. Martinez leaned forward. Mrs. Henderson, your husband didn't just save your life. He saved the lives of every person your children would have killed in the future. As I sat in my sister's kitchen that night, trying to understand how my life had gone from normal suburban widow to the target of my own children's murder plot in the span of a week, I realized something important. James hadn't just been protecting me with his investigation. He'd been protecting everyone. My husband died a hero. My children would die in prison. And I was going to have to figure out how to live with both of those truths. 6 months later, I stood in a courthouse in downtown Columbus, watching my children receive their sentences. Sarah got life without parole for 23 counts of first-degree murder, plus additional sentences for conspiracy, elder abuse, and financial fraud. She showed no emotion as the judge read the verdict, just the same cold calculation she'd shown that night in Ruth's living room. David got life without parole for conspiracy to commit murder, plus 40 years for financial crimes and racketeering. When the judge asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, he looked directly at me and said, "I'm sorry, Mom." I nodded. It was the best I could manage. The trial had been a media sensation. The Henderson Horror, the newspapers called it. Children of greed. The family that killed for money. Every day brought new revelations about the scope of their crimes. New victims coming forward. New evidence of just how far David and Sarah had fallen from the children I'd raised. The hardest part wasn't the public attention or the reporters constantly calling for interviews. The hardest part was sitting in that courtroom every day, listening to prosecutors describe in clinical detail how my children had methodically planned to murder their father and me. They played James's recordings for the jury. Hours of David and Sarah discussing the best methods to kill us, the timeline for our deaths, how to make it look natural. The jury listened in horrified silence as my daughter explained how different poisons affected elderly victims, as my son calculated exactly how much our deaths were worth to them financially. But there was one recording the prosecution saved for last, one that James had made just 3 days before he died. If anyone is hearing this, James's voice filled the courtroom, it means my children have succeeded in killing me, and Eleanor is in danger. I want everyone to know that I loved David and Sarah with all my heart. I wanted to be wrong about what they were planning. I hoped until my last breath that they would choose love over money, family over greed. His voice broke slightly on the recording. But if you're hearing this, it means they made their choice. Eleanor, if you're listening to this, I need you to know that none of this is your fault. We raised them with love and values and every advantage we could provide. What they became is not a reflection of our parenting or our love. Some people choose evil. I don't understand why, but they do. The entire courtroom was silent except for the sound of James's voice. Eleanor, I know this will be the hardest thing you've ever faced. Losing me, learning the truth about David and Sarah, surviving what they're planning to do to you. But I also know you're stronger than you realize. You're going to survive this, and you're going to rebuild, and you're going to find a way to be happy again. I was crying openly now, as were several jury members. To David and Sarah, if you're somehow hearing this, I loved you. I always loved you. I wish I could have saved you from yourselves. I wish I could have found a way to reach the good people I know you used to be. But I couldn't let you hurt your mother. I couldn't let you keep hurting innocent people. I hope someday you understand that everything I did was because I loved you too much to let you destroy more lives. The recording ended with James saying, Eleanor, live well, love again. Don't let what our children became destroy the happiness you deserve. When the verdicts were read and the sentences handed down, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Not satisfaction, not justice served, but simple relief that it was over. As I walked out of the courthouse that final day, Detective Martinez caught up with me. Mrs. Henderson, how are you holding up? I'm surviving, Detective. Some days that feels like enough. Have you thought about what comes next? I had been thinking about that a lot lately. The house in Cedar Falls held too many memories, too much pain. Ruth had been urging me to move to Columbus, to start fresh, somewhere new. Actually, I said, I think I'm going to travel. James and I always talked about seeing Europe, Australia, places we put off visiting because we were saving money or waiting for the right time. That sounds wonderful. Detective, can I ask you something? In your experience, do people really change? I mean fundamentally, at their core? Martinez considered the question carefully. I think people reveal who they really are when they're under pressure. Your children revealed themselves to be capable of terrible things. But Mrs. Henderson, you revealed yourself to be capable of incredible courage and strength. He was right. 6 months ago, I'd been a grieving widow who let her children make decisions for her, who trusted them completely despite warning signs I should have seen. Now I was someone who'd survived a murder attempt, testified against her own children, and was planning to see the world. James had been right. I was stronger than I'd realized. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a cafe in Paris, watching people hurry past on the sidewalk, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mrs. Henderson? This is Lisa Morgan from the Victim Rights Coalition. We've been following your case, and we wondered if you'd be interested in speaking to other families who've been victims of elder abuse. I sipped my coffee and watched a young couple share a pastry at the table next to mine. They reminded me of James and me when we were young, full of hopes and dreams and the belief that love could conquer anything. Mrs. Morgan, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure I'm ready for that. Of course, but if you change your mind, we think your story could help a lot of people. Families who've been betrayed by their own children, elderly people who are being financially exploited, anyone who needs to know they can fight back. After I hung up, I thought about James's final message. Live well. Love again. Don't let what our children became destroy the happiness you deserve. Maybe speaking to other victims could be part of living well. Maybe helping others recognize the warning signs I'd missed could be how I honored James's memory. But not yet. Right now, I was content to sit in a Parisian cafe, planning my next destination, grateful to be alive and free, and discovering who Eleanor Henderson could become when she wasn't defined by being someone's mother or wife. David and Sarah had taken my husband, my trust, my innocence about what people are capable of doing to those they claim to love. But they hadn't taken my future, and in the end, that made me the winner. I finished my coffee, pulled out the guidebook Ruth had given me, and started planning my trip to Rome. After all, I had a lot of living to catch up on. And as James had promised in his final recording, I was going to live well. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.